So thanks again for joining us. Let's introduce our experts. If you've joined our webinars before, you may already know Katie Tammany. Katie's official title is Chief Marketing Officer at Monrovia, but she is also our Chief Storyteller and Trend Spotter. Katie has more than 25 years of expertise in the lifestyle and leisure industries, and she is a longtime avid gardener with a specific interest in the intersections of garden, art, health, and well-being. Hi, Katie.
Good morning. Good to be here.
I'd also like you to meet Georgia Clay. Georgia is the plant selections manager at Monrovia, which means she is our go-to plant expert. In her role at Monrovia, she works with breeders and plant finders from around the world to bring new plants to market. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, Kathleen. Good morning.
I think we're all excited to see what's in store for 2025, so let's get started. Katie, take it away.
All right, let's get going. Okay. Well, we're here to talk about trends and plants for 2025. And as Kathleen mentioned, we thought we would start with a little poll and see what kind of gardeners we have tuning in today. So are you what we call an easy seeker? Maybe low maintenance is your main priority. Are you a wellness gardener? I get a lot of joy and, pride, happiness from nurturing my garden. Or maybe you're an ambitious garden. Like, I'm striving to make my garden the very best it can be. I'm interested in new plants. And you could be a little mix of each of these things, depending on where you are in the garden season. But the polling is coming in, and we've got about, looks like 150 people have responded so far. And it looks pretty, yeah. The ambitious gardener is about 40%. So that doesn't surprise me. A lot of you are tuning in to find out about new plants and trends. Tells me that you're setting goals for your garden next year. The wellness gardener, about 27% of you really identify with that. And then the easy seekers out there, give me low maintenance. So thanks for participating. That is a sneak preview on a little bit of our research. What we do every year, we survey like 1,400 homeowners across the US, people who purchased plants, and we ask them a series of questions that allows us to identify the motivations, challenges that gardeners out there may be having and what they're looking for in their plants. And from that information, we categorize gardeners out there through this lens. So we've got the easy seekers. Again, low maintenance tends to be their number one priority. And these are people who they tend to purchase a lot of annuals and perennials. The wellness gardeners, they really, love the act of being in their garden, and it really helps them de-stress, and that's their primary motivation for gardening. And then the ambitious gardeners, those are, as I said, people that are specifically interested in making their garden the best it can be, really having it be a source of pride for them. Their outdoor space is a reflection of their style and taste, and they're very much interested in new plants on the market and having something new and exciting in the garden each season. And as I said, maybe you identify a little bit with each of these types of gardeners, but we think when we're developing our plants and the way that we communicate, we're thinking about all of you out there in the market. So a few other things that I want to share about the research that we're seeing from our most recent study. And again, it's with homeowners across the US who purchase plants. The number one thing that people say is their big motivation is they just like that feeling of accomplishment when something blooms or grows well. And this has been true every time we've done this survey. It's not really changed that that's the number one feeling or attitude that people have about gardening. But a couple of things that are different this year that I want to highlight, both for our gardeners out there and our retail partners out in the audience, that 39% responding to the survey say that gardening is my me time, and that's gone up actually 8% just in the last year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that connection between de-stressing and gardening and just how we're seeing that grow over time. 36% say gardening reminds me of simpler times and makes me feel nostalgic. That's up 4% since last year. I think we all know that life as it gets stressful and more technology oriented, there's something wonderfully restorative about being in nature and about connecting to the simplicity of plants, the plants maybe that our mother or grandmother or father grew, and that connection to just slowing down. That is really continuing to be a major attraction for gardeners. And then 28% say, I like my garden to have a more natural look. Now that's up 6% since last year, and kind of indicating that the interest in native plants in a more natural garden ecosystem is becoming more and more popular. And finally, 26% say, I am gardening for the pollinators. That's up 6% since last year. And that's been a trend that we've been seeing for a while now. But what's interesting to me is that some respondents are saying that's the primary reason I'm gardening. Like, I want to be part of this larger ecosystem. I want my garden to be good for birds and butterflies and bees. I want to do my part. That's really increasing among all age groups and regions. So let's get into a deeper dive into that me time statistic, because I think it's important for our industry. And I want to share this with gardeners about what I think is going on out there. And Kathleen started the hour talking about how I have a particular interest in the connection people make between gardening and health and well-being. So I'm happy to see this, but this is just what the survey says. The items that have kind of increased a lot in the last year, one is gardening helps me feel hopeful and positive. That's gone up 4% to 45%. That's the statistic over here. And then strongly agreeing with gardening has become a new hobby or activity of mine at 31%. We've seen a 7% uptick there. An interesting fact behind these numbers is that gardening becoming a new hobby activity of mine, we've really seen a surge since COVID of more young men, 35 to 45, being interested in gardening as a hobby, being interested in not just mowing the lawn and taking care of their outdoor space, but in really getting interested in plants. Which we in the industry think is just fascinating, because that represents kind of a new audience, maybe with some new motivations and challenges that we hadn't thought about in the past. And then I think, not surprisingly, gardening is good for my mental health and well-being. We've been seeing that, frankly, ever since COVID, when we're all trapped at home. But what's different, what's new, is that keeps increasing every year, even though we have been able to, get out more and travel, and we certainly have done that, particularly in the last couple of years. What's not going down or not decreasing is this connection that people are making between gardening and how I feel about myself. It's not just for the value of my home, but it gives me greater rewards. And I think that means gardening is going to stick around for a good long time. So let's talk about a few key trends that have come out of our most recent surveys, the in-depth brand study that I just spoke about, but we also do other research on a monthly basis. We show many of our email subscribers, photos of plants, different styles of gardening to assess their interest. We also look at what people are responding to on our social media platforms, and we look at what people are searching for on our website. And out of all that, we can see the trends that are starting to emerge, these sort of catalysts in the market that are making people more interested in certain kinds of plants. So the first one I want to talk about is the modern meadow. And you may have heard me speak about this before. We are seeing a growing interest in, as I said, the natural looking landscape and native plants, or plants that behave maybe in a more well-behaved manner, but maybe it's a cultivar of a native. And what this means is that we're seeking, especially in our front yards, a more carefree style. We still want, them to be well-behaved, easy to maintain. So we're looking for more compact grasses, perennials that may bloom longer. And we want that mix of pollinator perennials and different kinds of grasses in this sort of like happy, wild look in our front yard. So that means a greater interest in things like echinacea, in some of our dwarf grasses and salvias. And I'm going to hand it off to Georgia now to talk about some of the key plants that are going to be part of this trend in 2025.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. So I'm starting off with two switch grasses, two new ones. The first is prairie dog up on the top left. This is like you mentioned, a shorter switchgrass. So it's only going to be, 3 to 4 feet tall or so and about 3 feet wide. It has this really beautiful, cool blue foliage and then a nice pink, rosy summer bloom. In our trials, the foliage color, that blue foliage was what really stood out. But then over time, it's very upright, super sturdy stems, even through the winter, was also what made this one particularly a winner. Just kept that nice, tidy habit while still giving you this loose meadow-like feel. And then hot rod, which is another switchgrass, like I mentioned, similar habit, similar size, but the foliage, though it emerges blue-green, it quickly matures to red. So over the summer, you have this reddish foliage, and then it blends into more purple tones through the fall. So if you're looking for something, instead of that cool blue, you want something a little warmer, a little more intense red, hot rod would be the right one for you. And then next is Stars and Stripes Scirpus. Scirpus is a native prairie plant to the United States. This is a cultivar of Scirpus, and it is the first variegated one on the market, which is really cool. I really love this plant because it looks a lot like a carex, but it has increased hardiness. So it's hardy all the way down to zone 4. And you have that brilliant bright yellow center, that strong green edge, and it stays nice and small, so 18 inches or so in the landscape.
And does it get little like plumes or something? I thought that I saw there was a lot going on, at the Oregon nursery.
Yeah, it does. It has these really beautiful, almost star-like flower clusters at the very tips. Yeah, so it's really beautiful, both for that movement and for that form and color that it can bring to the garden. And then you mentioned echinaceas. We look at a lot of echinaceas. We trial hundreds of them every year. And the sun seekers are the newest addition to our lineup. They are gorgeous. You can see just from that photo, that super unique form, that petal on petal, super frilly. You get that double look while still having your cone exposed. So if you're gardening for pollinators, they can still get into that cone really nice and easily. They also have this really dense habit. So strong branching from the base, which gives us this really full bushy form, just completely covered in flowers. So you get a ton of flower power, that vibrant color. And instead of getting tall and spindly, it's going to stay nice and compact for you. So you don't have to stake or tie or do any effort like that.
They're amazing. They're just so lush, lovely.
Yeah. And then in the middle there is Blue Jean Baby, which is a Russian sage. This is a really nice one. I really love it because it's one of the earliest Perovskia to bloom, and that is not at the expense of the bloom time. So you just get a longer bloom cycle. Like you mentioned, Katie, we're really focused on longer bloom, especially in perennials. So it continues to bloom well into the fall, and it has a shorter, more compact habit. So a lot of Russian sage can flop over or lodge in the landscape. This one doesn't do that. It has sturdy stems. It's only going to be 2 to 3 feet tall. And then Cobalt Millennium, which is a new allium we introduced this year. We'll have more for 2025 as well. It is a sport off of the ever popular Millennium allium. And what makes this really unique is that glaucous blue foliage. So you get the really interesting color. It produces a ton of flowers over a super long period of time. Just a really fun plant, great for pollinators and for cut flowers too.
And the blooms can get pretty big too.
They
It's,
can.
Mhm.
Yeah, they get quite large and they've got that really beautiful, like deep lavender, rosy pink color to them. I think it blooms a little bit more so than Millennium does as well.
Mhm.
And then a couple more options for this. Lemon Ice California Lilac or Ceanothus is a really beautiful new shrub. You can see the variegation there, that dark green leaf with that edge of lime green. Blue summer flowers on this one. Just a really unique evergreen shrub, great for water-wise gardens. And it stays about 4 feet tall by 3 feet wide, which is much smaller than some of the more traditional Ceanothus that we think of.
Mhm.
And then one of my favorite new grasses that we're introducing is color grass Amazon mist. This is a beautiful carex with this silvery green foliage. It is ultra fine, so you get a ton of movement and that really nice cascading form. I have this in a container at my house. It's stunning.
And how tall does it get? It stays pretty well behaved, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, I've seen it get about, I want to say 18 inches or so.
Mhm. Nice.
And then Blonde Ambition, which is a blue grama grass. This is another selection or cultivar of a native type genus to the United States. This also has outstanding tolerance to dry heat. So if you're in a really dry, warm area, this is a great grass for you. The summer flowers are golden and almost flag-like. It's one of my favorite grasses planted in Mass. It's gorgeous. And then a couple new perennials, Pink Nebula, which is a salvia with that large, intense pink bloom, strong branching. It's also one of the earliest nemarosas to bloom. Again, not at the expense of the total bloom time, so you just get a longer bloom period. And then there's no cooling requirement, which means it's going to reliably flower even in warmer zones, which is great. And then two new perennials for 2025. The first is Irresistible Magenta, which is a zone 5 hardy, brilliantly colored erysimum. That ombre bloom with the coral pinks and the purple and the magentas, and then the flowers are right above the foliage, which is great. Oftentimes they get really big and really leggy, so having them nice and compact and right above is wonderful. And then Hunky Dory Blue, which is a delphinium. This is another plant that's much earlier to flower than other delphiniums, and you have that brilliant bright blue flower. It is a gorgeous color. You have to see it in person to really get that blue.
Yeah, that's just stunning. It's just
It,
such a surprise.
it's
We're gonna create some landscape plans for the modern meadow for people for next spring, because one of the challenges with all these choices is how do I put this together in a way that really looks, natural, but has that diversity of plantings. So look for some of those plans featuring these plants early spring. Okay, second trend I wanted to talk about. I was recently asked at a talk that I gave about what is the next kind of glamour animal. I really hadn't thought about glamour animals before, but these are animals like dolphins or whales or penguins where people feel like, oh, they're cute, there's a connection to them. And hummingbirds, I think, are the glamour animal that are emerging from the many pollinators that you can attract to your garden. Hummingbirds are becoming incredibly popular for gardeners to think about, how do I attract this particular pollinator to my garden? And some of the plants that pollinators love, of course, are anything with that tubular flower that the hummingbird can just pop their beak in quickly. And we have quite a few in this category, Georgia, new and plants that we've been, maybe we introduced like a year or two ago, but we now have them in abundance. So if hummingbirds are your thing, we've got a selection for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. This was really fun to put together because I also love hummingbirds. So Color Burst Yellow, which is a Cape Fuchsia, is one of my favorite plants, Monrovia exclusive here. It's a really easy care plant. Typically, Cape Fuchsias get, 6 feet tall in the garden. These are only going to be about 3 feet tall. So really nice and compact, which just helps it stay sturdy, but it covers itself in these beautiful long tubular flowers. We have a lot of colors to choose from. I love this yellow, but we also have a great red, orange, magenta, lots of different colors for your garden.
And they really look very fun in a container too. It's great to have in the mix because they look like they're dancing. The blooms just look really great.
Yeah, and this is Cape Fuchsias are great for drought tolerance too. So they really thrive in warm areas. So if you're really hot, Cape Fuchsia would be great for that. And then Crocosmia, this is Columbus Crocosmia. We had this in our courtyard. We have an event every August, and Columbus Crocosmia was planted in a container nearby, and the hummingbirds were just going after it all day long. So this had to be included. It has this beautiful, bright golden orange flower, and the foliage is quite grassy in texture. Again, just about 3 feet tall or so in the garden. And then Rocket Junior, which is a red hot poker or a Nymphophia. This is one of our newest or the newest Nymphophia to hit the market, and it is much more compact. So if you're familiar with the Poco series of Nymphophia, that's currently our most compact. Those Pocos flower at about 24 inches. Rocket Junior will flower at about 16 inches.
Hmm.
So much more compact, very tight, very upright, and heavy, heavy, heavy flowering.
Mhm.
And then Penstemon, of course, our Harlequin series. The one I'm showing here is purple, beautiful flower color. Again, Penstemon can sometimes get tall and split or get a little leggy, but the Harlequin series are much more compact. They branch at the base, so they're multi-stemmed and they get about 2 feet tall or so. So they're staying nice and tidy, but they have these large blooms and they rebloom throughout the summer. And then Pink Pearl is an agastache, the newest one to hit the market and my favorite. It's one of the most asked about plants in my personal garden. It has these beautiful extra large flowers from late spring, early summer, depending on where you live, into fall. And it's really compact, so 18 inches tall or so, and it just blooms for months and months and months. It's a gorgeous plant.
So pretty.
And then Monarda. So Monarda is a wonderful plant that can often be troubled with powdery mildew and get very tall. But the Balmy series was selected for its better resistance to things like powdery mildew. So if you have troubles with that in your garden in the past, Balmy series of Monarda is really fantastic. And again, it stays nice and short, so 12 inches tall or so, and just these beautiful masses of vibrant pink flowers.
And all of these would make excellent choices for the modern meadow too. They would all be great sprinkled in. But we've got others. There's more.
Yeah, there's more. Definitely. So shrubs and vines also, it's not just perennials, but something like stoplights, red yucca, hesperalo. This is a new hesperalo with electric fire engine red flowers. It's going to stay small. So you notice a theme. We're trying to shrink things down to fit into our modern gardens where we still want a lot of diversity, but we don't have a lot of space typically. So the foliage is nice and soft, and it's only going to be about 2 feet high. And then with the flower stalks on top, that's going to ultimately be about 3 feet high. So you get this really beautiful plant with that, like I said, electric fire engine red flower. I like these because it's great for the desert, hot, arid climates, but it's also quite hardy to zone 5.
Yeah, that's a great find because those areas are getting hotter and drier.
Yes. Yes. And then, of course, we can't talk about hummingbirds without talking about honeysuckle. So gold flame, which has that nice fragrant flower. They're pink on the outside and then golden yellow on the inside. And then lastly is our Chateau series. This one is called Chateau de Versailles. I really love our Chateau series of Hibiscus syriacus or Rose of Sharon. They produce buds up and down the stem at just about every single internode. And having buds at every internode just greatly increases your bloom quantity and the bloom timing. So you get a really long bloom window and with these really large bright blue flowers on a nice habit. So 6 feet tall, nice vase shaped with foliage all the way down to the base.
Lovely. I want one. I think we grow like a white one with the pink center. Yeah,
We do.
want to add that. Well, let's talk about white and some bold colors. So third in our trend of what's appealing more and more to gardeners and for that matter, breeders, is bold colors. Really intense pinks, purples, blues, and then that's softened by pure whites, not so much ivory, but really clean white, whether that's in hydrangeas or azaleas. And then the other thing that we're seeing is a lot of lush layers in blooms, like the rose, for instance, that I have up there, the Eau de Parfum rose, just sort of that layering that we saw with the Sunseekers Echinacea series too, that Georgia was talking about. So think bold, lush, that's what we're looking to see in our gardens next year. Bold color, lush layers, and icy white.
Yeah, so lots of options for this, but we'll start with an echinacea. This is Panama Red. This is another new echinacea that's come to market. Brilliant, bright red flower, that fire engine red. You can see it has a dark cone. And then what's cool is it has a dark black stem as well. So it's a really nice plant, just super saturated all around. Loads of flowers. Like we talked about with sunseekers, great basal branching. So a nice shrubby, not shrubby, but rounded habit, which means no need to stake in the garden.
And we saw that red really last year was coming on strong as a key color in the garden. And it's great to see more echinaceas, with that bold red.
Yeah, and a lot of echinaceas tend to fade out or go to a more almost pinky tone, but this really stays that bright red. And then next is Seaside Serenade Newport Hydrangea. This is such an intense, deep purple flower that it really stands out against anything else on the market. It's only going to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, and it has these super thick, sturdy stems, so it's not going to fall over when it's in full bloom, and this blooms a ton. It also has thick, leathery flowers and foliage. So because they're thick and leathery, it makes them less susceptible to tattering or tearing, especially in those summer storms or wind events that a lot of people can get in the summer. And it also, the flowers being so thick and leathery helps them last. So they last for, months and months and months on the plant themselves. Also make a great cut flower. Like I mentioned, they do put on a ton of blooms, and they bloom on both old and new wood. And then next is a rose. This is from our Eau de Parfum series. It's the Bling Rose with that gorgeous deep pink flower. That seems like a hard flower color to really get this, like capture it in a photo, but it's a truly vibrant pink flower. The Eau de Parfum, as you might guess, is part of our fragrant collection. So they were selected for exceptional fragrance. They were also selected for high petal count, so that more old-fashioned looking rose, and good disease resistance. So these are really fantastic landscape roses. They're going to be about 4 feet tall by 4 feet wide or so.
And there's also a berry color too, and even like more intense magenta color for this rose. That's super, it's very eye-catching. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say the berry takes on like as close to a purple as we've found in a rose right now. The berry really captures that, so beautiful selection too. And then Fire Frost Lantana is a new one for 2025. We are seeing a lot of new annual type lantanas to hit the market, but this is a true landscape lantana, which means it's hardy down to zone 7. So this has been reliable in the where it was bred down in the southeast and like Atlanta, Georgia area for 10 plus years, so we know it's reliably hardy. And it's a beautiful plant with that bright red flower, golden orange center, and it has this naturally sort of spreading habit. So really nice for the landscape. And then Frill Seeker Clematis. This is a really fun one with that large, bright purple double bloom, and you can sort of see the silvery white underside peeking out in this photo. Really gorgeous plant. It blooms in the late spring, and then it will sporadically bloom towards the end of the summer, but you get this really gorgeous show in the spring, and then like I mentioned, just a handful of flowers just to keep you intrigued by it throughout the season. And then a new Dicentra. This one is one of my favorite new perennials we're introducing. It's Amore Titanium. It has that pure white flower that you mentioned is key to this, a blue-green foliage, but it blooms not just in the spring, but through the heat. So this thing has bloomed throughout the country in all of our trials for months, spring through summer and into the fall. It's still blooming, which is pretty insane for a Dicentra. So I'm excited about it.
And it's got that delicate, we'll be talking about nostalgia in a moment, but it's just got that romantic sort of sweet vibe to it. Looks great in containers, as well as the landscape.
Yeah, and then a couple more. Evie Jane, which is a new Ito in the Garden Candy series. That whole Garden Candy series features a lot of really unique, saturated, large flowers. You can see Evie Jane is that bright pink. They're all going to stay about 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide. and they produce a ton of side shoots. And
Mm.
every single side shoot produces a flower. So you get this amazing show in the spring, just tons and tons of flowers. They require no staking, which is really key for a peony to be able to enjoy it on the nice bushy form without it flopping over. We have seen no mildew problems. It's just a really fantastic landscape plant.
Wow. And we had a few of these last year, but really this spring, look for more of these out in the market.
Yeah, we've been working directly with the breeder of of these peonies.
Mhm.
And so we were able to get, as he was releasing them, we were able to get what we could. And he's able to keep up a little bit better with the demand now. And so we're going to have a little bit more. Yeah. And then Granvia Gold, which is a straw flower, extra, extra large. The flowers are twice the size of a typical straw flower. They're amazing. And they're just bright, bright yellow. They will bloom from late spring well into the fall. So you get a huge flower display throughout the season. Great, quite vigorous, and also great for cut flowers. You can cut them throughout the year and put them in vases for your house. And then Grace and Grit White, which is our newest addition to the Grace and Grit series. It has crisp, pure white flowers. They're going to self-clean and they repeat bloom throughout the season. Like the others in the series, they have glossy foliage. It has high disease resistance to things like leaf spot, and it's on its own root. So that's really lovely. This is going to be about 4 feet tall by 4 feet wide. And then Sun Magic Vintage Electric Orange. This is another new series of echinacea that really, really stood out to us in our trials. Super bright orange flower, as you might guess from that name. But again, same story, great basal branching, really nice bushy habit, completely covered in flowers. It blooms earlier, it blooms longer, it just is constantly in flower, again with no flopping, no staking, just months and months of bloom.
No, so for all those low maintenance gardeners out there, great choices, on the screen. And cut flower fans, I mean, so many exciting things for cut flower lovers. Well, let's turn from blooms actually to talk about green and the serenity of a trend that we're seeing called green drenching. So that connection that we're making between gardening and wellness and well-being also means that we're desiring living spaces that just have this feeling of calming and serenity. And a lot of that can come through a lot of, greenery and just building your greenery up, looking for plants that create vertical walls, whether that's in a fantastic shrub or in vines that you can add to fencing and walls around a patio area. So strong interest in foliage with different kind of texture and varying the foliage texture in your garden space. So having some broader leafed foliage, plants, and then some with tiny, tiny leaves, and having that contrast is really appealing in the green drenching trend.
Yeah, so green drenching, I thought, what better place to start than evergreen shrubs as your foundation for this? So we've got a lot of different options here. The first being Dragon Prince Japanese cedar or cryptomeria. This is a wonderful plant. It's only going to get 2 to 3 feet tall by maybe a little bit wider, so it's pretty round. It has this really nice, neat, tidy look to it, brings great texture. It's a really, really tough plant with really good disease resistance. And then next is Luxus Compact, which is a Japanese holly. This is a male holly selection, so no berries. It was really selected for that dark green, flat boxwood-like foliage and a shape that's really easy to shear and a color that holds all year long. So you get this really nice deep green color all year. It's only going to be 3 by 3 or so, and it makes a great boxwood replacement.
Wow.
I have a hedge of this in my front yard, and the amount of comments, great boxwood hedge. I love your boxwood hedge. So it's hard to tell the difference. It's a really great replacement for that. And then if you're looking for something that has the similar look, but you want it maybe a little bit bigger, Emerald Boxer might be a good choice for you. This one, instead of saying 3x3, it's going to be about 6x6.
Mhm.
This was bred by Dr. Durr down in the University of Georgia, and it's really, really a beautiful, well-rounded shrub with no inputs really at all. I saw the original selection in Dr. Durr's in Dr. Reuter's, sorry, excuse me, Dr. Reuter's landscape, and it was perfectly round, a really great shrub. And then down below is Crown Shine Osmanthus. This is another evergreen rounded shrub with that toothy small foliage. So you get a different foliage feel here. I also really love that it produces white flowers in the spring. They're very small, but quite fragrant.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then if you're looking for more of like a screening or tall hedging plant to create that wall in the background, Gold Coast Pittosporum is a new selection that we're introducing. This is a really beautiful choice for that wall, but with more of an airy texture. So you get a lot of movement as well. It's going to be about 10 feet tall, so you do get a nice screen from it, and that really unique lime green foliage and that dark black stem make it really neat.
It's so pretty. I have two of these actually in my garden that I just put in last year, and they're so eye-catching. I mean, sometimes we forget that, evergreens and, foliage can really be striking and make a statement, but they do. I mean, they're just stunning.
Yeah, I agree. I planted these as well, and I love them. Love them. But if you're looking for, if the idea of like an airy screen isn't really what you're looking for and you want more of like a true green fence, something like Tight Squeeze, which is a thuya or Western red cedar, would be a really great option. This is a sport off of Green Giant. And why Green Giant can get massive really, really quickly, this Tight Squeeze is much more well behaved. So it stays more compact, more uniform. It has a really tight conical growth habit, and it retains that green color well into the winter. So you don't get those brown and orange tones into your green drenched garden.
You keep it green.
Yes. And then another great way is these evergreen vines. So a few of our favorites would be Madison Star Jasmine. This is a selection that produces more flowers. It has an extended bloom time, the same incredible fragrance as regular star jasmine, but it's also hardier. So typical star jasmine's hardy to about zone 8, whereas Madison is hardy to zone 7. So you open up the door to a lot of new gardeners with Madison Star Jasmine. It's a great, great plant. And then Evergreen Clematis. So this is another it's going to flower in the earliest parts of spring. They're again super fragrant, and this vine is very vigorous, quick to fill in. I have a puppy at the time that I planted my Evergreen Clematis who ate half of it, and it's still filled in. So
And the puppy's okay.
yes, yes. And then down below is Camouflage Variegated Japanese Aurelia. This is a large shrub. It has this beautiful evergreen foliage you can see in the photo shades of lime and dark green. Really wonderful for brightening up a shady area. I also really like Aurelia because you can bring it inside. So if it's hardy, you can keep it full time in the garden, but if it's not, you can move it in and out perfectly fine as a houseplant as well.
And this is part of the Dan Hinckley collection. He found it for us originally, and it's as you said. I have this in a pot on my deck, and I'm zone 10, so it's out there all the time. But it's a plant that once you've gotten it established wherever you have it, it's very low maintenance. It tolerates a lot of neglect.
Yeah. Lastly for this is the Ice and Roses hellebore. The hellebores they really vary widely. And I will say the Ice and Roses is such an improvement on the standard hellebore. The standard hellebore typically, gorgeous flowers that are going to hang down a bit, but the foliage is, sometimes people even cut it off because it's just really like stringy and a lot of times not very vigorous. But the Ice and Roses foliage is actually gorgeous. It's a beautiful part of the plant. So even when it's not in bloom, that foliage is deep green and strong and really quite beautiful. And then when the flowers are there, there's a ton of them. They are so prolific in flower, and the flowers face upwards instead of hanging down. So you can really enjoy that face.
Yeah, and it's got that sort of fresh white. It's sort of popping out in early, spring when you're craving the first sign that the seasons are changing. Love the Ice and Roses series. Okay, want to talk about what we call romancing the edible garden here, where we're attracted to plants because they remind us of simpler times, or we're attracted to the plants that remind us of simpler times, and the romance of hydrangeas and roses and sunflowers, but weaving them into spaces where we also want productivity, where maybe we have our edible garden, we've got raised beds, adding in plants that ordinarily wouldn't be there, to create this kind of romantic, productive cottage garden. So some of the things that we're seeing are mixing hydrangeas and blueberries for a hedge, for instance, in mild climates. The image in the center here is from Coastal Homestead. She's a designer down in Orange County, and this was a garden plan she did at the Pasadena Showcase House, and it blended roses and hydrangeas with lots of berries, just beautiful kind of way to blend unexpected partners in the landscape. And we're seeing a lot of interest in, besides blueberries, in strawberries and apples. We're seeing them tucked into roses and in all kinds of places that we never saw them before. And thinking of apples for structure in the landscape, almost like, like you would think of a statement tree. Oh, but this tree, has fruit. And then seeing more and more sunflowers and other perennials throughout a raised bed garden area. So we call it romancing the edible garden.
Yeah, so how to read this slide is from the left. So we're going to look at Bountiful Belle paired with Seaside Serenade Crystal Cove, and we'll just keep going over to the right.
So
Okay,
these are perfect pairs. Okay.
yes, in my mind, right? So Bountiful Belle Blueberry. This is our newest blueberry in our Bountiful collection. You can see it has that stunning foliage, and that's really like, it's so amazing. That pinky red tip throughout the year, even in the heat. So, we had this in Visalia, California, as part of our trial gardens when we're very first looking at it. A lot of times things will lose their color there, but this photo, I believe, was taken in Visalia. Just a gorgeous color. And then that turns more icy blue in the fall with that same pink tip. So beautiful foliage. Not only does it work ornamentally, but it's also quite productive. So it does produce delicious berries, and it has a fantastic habit, I should say. So it's going to be 4x4. So instead of getting that really spindly where it throws up a bunch of different stems and it gets really tall, this is going to be nice and well behaved. So perfect for hedging, like you mentioned, Katie, as an idea. And then pairing it with Crystal Cove, you can see the colors play really well together here, bringing out the pinks. And Crystal Cove is one of our newest hydrangeas as well. It's a beautiful lace-capped flower. They're quite large, the flowers themselves, and they open up with this blush white center and then get this really beautiful deep pink purple edging with this really dramatic sort of undulated edge there. Really strong stems and a great rebloom as well. It's going to be similar in size, about 4x4. And then moving to the middle here, we've got Fruit Snacks Blushing Delight Apple. Fruit Snacks are super, super cool. It's a brand new tree to come out. There's a few different varieties of apples. They all taste delicious, and they're all on these trees that are upright and dwarf and very skinny. So they're going to be, 8 to 12 feet tall by 3 to 5 feet wide. So really dramatic for in the garden.
Yeah, you could have that productive kind of mini orchard in a tight, tight space.
Yeah. So if you're in a smaller space and you want to do, even a hedge in apple would be really cool. But just a really cool plant, needs minimal pruning, minimal care. So they've got really good resistance to rust and apple scab, which can be an issue, especially for homeowners that don't really like to spray. This is a really good option for you. And then we're pairing that with shortstop Shasta daisy, which has that classic Shasta daisy flower on a really tight, low habit. So it's only going to be about 15 inches tall or so. Super heavy flowering and just consistently fantastic year after year. Every time I see this plant, it's my favorite Shasta daisy that's on the market. And then next is strawberry. So Eversweet is a variety of strawberry that was bred to perform well in the hot southern climates, not exclusively to the hot southern climates, but it really does well there. It will bloom and bear fruit throughout the heat of the summer and into the fall. I have this variety along with several others, and I'm harvesting Eversweet well past when I'm harvesting the rest. So you get a really long season with this. And then we're pairing it with nitty gritty white, which is a beautiful plant that produces these sprays of white flowers. They self-clean really well. They repeat bloom throughout the summer, so you get a really long bloom season. It has glossy foliage, highly disease resistant, and it's on its own root. The habit of this is a little bit of a rambler, which is kind of nice, especially in this sort of romantic free garden. It's a little wider than tall, so 3 feet tall by maybe 4 feet wide or so.
Yeah, and that sort of rambling nature gives that cottage garden that feel of just, kind of, yeah, like you said, carefree. It's just lovely. I love, love, love this nitty-gritty rose. I think it's been such a surprise, actually. Many people that have tried it have just been surprised at the abundance of blooms, how long it keeps blooming. So it's a keeper.
Mhm.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah, there's always more. So next is Honey Babe, which is a miniature peach. This variety only gets like 5 to 6 feet tall, which is really fun, perfect for being able to harvest really easily, great for containers or small space gardens. The peaches themselves are freestone, so it's really easy to get that pit out of them. They're nice and sweet, and it will self-pollinate, but it's better to have two. You'll get more of a harvest with two. But we're pairing that with our newest Spanish lavender, which is Anouk Burgundy. This color is amazing. It's the darkest lavender on the market. It's a true burgundy color. Really special plant. We'll have it for 2025. And it has great rebloom and good disease resistance as well.
Wow. I mean, it's part of that bold color, trend we were talking about, but I'm just imagining that in the garden with the peach, what a stunning summer pairing that would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then another more of a water-wise take on this sort of trend. So we're starting with herbs like rosemary, Tuscan blue. So perfectly at home in not only your ornamental bed, but also your herb garden, this plant. It has those lovely blue flowers along the stem. Of course, that fragrant foliage that's very useful in an herb garden. And it gets about 6 feet tall by maybe 2 to 4 feet wide. So really great for screening. Also a nice evergreen screen option. And then we're pairing rosemary with another new waterized plant. It's called Dazzle Rocks Sea Lavender or Limonium or Status, depending on who you're talking to. So this is a really great cut flower. So it produces a ton of these flowers. They're nice lavender. And then when they dry on the plant, they stay lavender. So you can't tell really what's fresh and what's new, and it's constantly putting on new flowers. It's just gorgeous. And then the foliage itself is nice and flat, almost
It's
like
more
a succulent one.
compact. Yeah, it seems like the foliage stays short, so the blooms really stand out.
Yeah. And what's also nice about this is that it's hardy. So most limonium are not hardy, maybe to zone 8 or so, but this one is hardy to zone 5. So significant increase in hardiness.
Mhm.
And then lastly is Superlicious Blackberry. This is a compact, thornless blackberry. It produces, you can see that large berry, wonderful flavor. We're seeing good production on this even in low chill areas. So even in Southern California, we're getting good berry production out of Superlicious, which is great. And then we're pairing it with our another new echinacea. This is Double Scoop Raspberry Deluxe. And you can see we have a lot of new echinaceas, but they're all quite different. And this is the doubles that we really feel are much big improvement to our double echinacea lineup. So these have improved branching. The theme of our echinaceas is that we want it to be strong basal branched and tons of flowers. And this does that. And it has a super high flower count. And it's going to be about 24 inches in the garden or so.
Stunning color. I love that. The ice cream.
Mhm.
Ice cream flavor quality there. So you talked throughout our discussion today, Georgia, you mentioned plants that you have in your garden. And I just wanted to let people know, if you want to see Georgia's garden, it's on our YouTube channel. We worked together to create a front yard makeover, the beginning of several makeovers we plan with her property in Oregon. And you can tune into Monrovia Plants YouTube channel to watch the progression. We're going to go back to Georgia's garden again in fall and give an update, but you could see everything that she planted there. And that concludes the trends and plants we wanted to cover, but I think we do have some time for questions. So Kathleen, I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah, I know my wish list for 2025 just got a lot longer, and I'm sure everybody else too. So we had some great questions. Georgia, I'm going to send them to you at this point first. So one of the main questions that we had was on Fire Frost Lantana. Is it more of a cool color in tone or warm in tone?
I would definitely say it's more of a warm color. It definitely has those reds and oranges, what brings out a lot of the warm red tones.
Awesome. Lots of questions on Stars and Stripes as well. Wanting to know, is it a self-seeder? Have you seen any reversions on it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so Scirpus is something I've learned about in the last, I didn't know this genus either. Not a lot of people do that I know of. Maybe one of the viewers does. But the species on it is Scirpus pendulus, and it is a native to the prairies of the Midwest in the United States. And from what I've read about Scirpus is that it will spread, it does self-seed and it does eventually spread via rhizome. But because it's native, it's not, we haven't seen it get out of hand in our landscapes that we've put them in. And I haven't seen any reversion either. But, a lot of times with this new stuff, we see it for several years, and sometimes it can take 10 years for something to revert. So we haven't seen that, but there's still, we'll see how it does in your garden, but I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely. We always get these questions, and I think we can kind of go around and talk about that as well. Everyone wants to know what is behind all of us on our screens. So mine is Blackhawk's big blue stem. Katie?
Oh, and mine is Lady Pterodactyl. It's a fern from the Jurassic Fern series brought to us by Dan Hinckley.
And mine is Nitty Gritty Peach Rose. Similar in habit and size to the white, but with this lovely peach color to it.
One of my favorites. Katie, we had lots of questions on, I need a plant for this specific zone or this location in my garden. Can you give us a few tips for finding information on the website?
Sure. I'm just going to share that website with you. So on monrovia.com, if you go to My Plant Finder, you can enter your zip code, and I can search for, plants that just will grow well in my zone. And you can see I'm in zone 10, or I can also search by any kind of filter that I want, by water exposure, by when it flowers, by how I plan to, use it in the landscape, how high it gets. So I recommend going on My Plant Finder and putting in, your criteria and your zone, and you'll get the list of what we're, currently growing that might suit your needs.
Fantastic. Well, I think those are the main questions that we had. If you did submit a question and we haven't answered it, we will get back to you. And if there's anything else that we missed today, please send us an email and we can check that out. Just a quick reminder that you will receive a link to the recording today once the webinar is completed. And that email will also include all of the plant information, everything that Georgia and Katie talked about today. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And look out for landscape plans that will reflect some of the trends that we talked about. You can be assured to get those plans if you subscribe to the newsletter. You'll get them. You'll get a link automatically when they come out. And then the other idea that I would point out is that you can see what our newest, latest, featured plants are. If you look at distinctive selections on our website, you can see kind of our top 150 plants that are new or that we feel are the most revolutionary in terms of features that they have. So look for that as well. And thanks again for joining us today.